Hey guys, it's Key here from KegLand, and I'm just going to show you how to set up one of these awesome Series 4 Kegerators. Now these new Series 4 Kegerators come with all the best gear. So you've got our new Mark IV regulator, you've got our new Duotight fittings, so they're all Duotight compatible shanks and all that. And you've also got our new Everbarrier beer lines, our new double wall beer line as well. So we've basically put all the best gear in here and made it really easy for you guys to set up at home. Now the first thing you want to do is tip the fridge on its side. Now whenever you're tipping the fridge on its side like this, or if you've ever moved the fridge, you've got to make sure you stand it back up for 24 hours before plugging it in the power point. That's really important because oil can work its way around the system, and if it gets into the wrong parts of the mechanics, then it causes issues later on. So just remember that. Alright, now on the underside of the Kegerator, you'll notice that you've got a range of different holes here. Sometimes you get a little bit of foam which is just seeped out from the underside of the mold. It's not really a big deal. You can pick it off if you want. It's not a really big deal. Then this is where we fit on the caster wheels. So the caster wheels that generally come with the unit are these little small ones, and you get two with a brake like this, and then you get two without a brake. So I guess a lot of people find it more convenient to put the brake ones at the front, so that's on the door side in other words. They're pretty easy to fit. You just need like a Phillips head screwdriver, or I'm using a little socket set here as well, so either way. Now on this configuration with the holes here, we've got 6 holes because we've got 2 sets of caster wheels that can be used. The ones that come with it, or you can upgrade to the larger polyurethane caster wheels, which I'll show you in a tick. So if you're using the small ones that come with it, you just put the screws in like that, and put 4 in each one, and then do the whole lot. So it's pretty straightforward. The only other thing I'll point out is it's not a bad idea if you are putting these ones with the brake at the front here. It's a little bit close to the brake and the leg, so if you are putting these on the front, make sure to take these legs out as well, because they can sometimes obstruct the free movement of the caster wheel swiveling around. So I just probably say do that as well. So I'm just going to whip this one out like that, then just put that in the safe spot. You're not going to lose it. So if you're planning on upgrading your caster wheels to these 100mm polyurethane ones, these are the ones that I would recommend, then it's more or less the same procedure. You're going to have 2 wheels which have a brake like this, and then 2 without a brake. You'll see when you have the orientation of the wheels on the base of the Kegerator, the ones that are at the front are facing in this direction. So I would normally put the ones with the brake on the door side, just same as the small ones. And then the ones at the back, they're in a perpendicular direction, so facing like that, and then when at the front, they're like that. It's also important to remember to choose a suitable caster wheel for the type of bumps you're going over. Generally speaking, if you've got a caster wheel which is 100mm, it'll be able to go over about bumps which are about 1 centimetre high. So it's about 10% the diameter of the wheel, in other words. So because these caster wheels are 100mm, it's about 1 centimetre. Or if you get these really small caster wheels, which are only about 35mm in diameter, they can only go over bumps which are about 3 or 4 millimetres high. Now, when you get your Kegerator set up, we've sort of packed them a little bit differently in the past, but now all the new Kegerators we're packing are pretty much all coming with this new Everbarrier double wall beer line. Now, this is the highest quality beer line that we offer, and it's a really fantastic beer line. The double wall really gives it much better properties, but the first thing you'll notice when you open up the pack is one of the beer lines we marked in here with 5mm by 8mm, meaning it's 5mm internal diameter and 8mm outside diameter. Now we've also got the 4mm internal diameter, and it also says that on the side of the beer line printed here. 4mm by 8mm as well. So basically, if you look at the 2 diameters like this, you'll see one has a small inside diameter, one has a larger one. Now the one with the 5mm, that's for gas. Gas doesn't really matter what length you use, and it doesn't really matter what diameter you use. We just like to use the same 8mm outside diameter, so all the 8mm push-in fittings are interchangeable between the 2, which kind of makes it handy in that respect. So just make sure you're putting the 5mm aside for gas, and then we're using the 4mm for beer. The beauty about using a really small internal diameter for beer is we get fairly high flow resistance, meaning that we don't need to have a very long line coiled up in the fridge. Every time we increase the internal diameter by about 1 millimetre, we have to almost double the length. So if you look at 4mm ID, we only need about 1.5 metres. If we went to 5mm ID, we have to get about maybe 3 to 4 metres. So we need quite a bit more beer line. That means a lot more mess inside the fridge. And the other thing is it means you've got more beer sitting in the lines as well. Not only more beer per metre, but also more metres of beer line. So it's sort of a double whammy there, meaning you've got a lot more beer line wasted when you're cleaning out, a lot more beer wasted when you're cleaning your lines out. All right, so yeah, when you're fitting up the fonts, yeah, you'll notice if you've got a 3-tap font, these are probably the hardest ones to fit. So inside there, you always want to start with the lowest shank here. So when you're putting the shanks in, start with this one first, because if you put these 2 in, it becomes harder to get the 3rd one in there. So yeah, when you just put it in there, you can see the arrangement that it goes in. I'm just going to show you another one right now. So I'm going to get the one of the top beer lines, you've got the Formula ID, I'm pushing it up the font here. And then I'm going to bring it right out the top of the font first, like this. Then I'm going to get the slimline nut. I'm going to put that on first. Doesn't matter which orientation, go like this, or you can flip it over, doesn't really matter. This concave plastic piece though, this is important. You've got to put it on that way. So it's the flat side, if you can see that flat side here, facing towards the slimline nut. Then what I'm going to do is feed that into the tube a little bit like that. Then get the tube and push it out through the font, like so. Now you'll notice with all the new shanks that we're doing from 2019 onwards, we've actually got a duotype push-in fitting compatible shank. So these shanks, you can also just get that internal diameter there and stretch it over here and secure it with a hose clamp, just like a conventional tap shank. But the other beauty about these tap shanks is they take the duotype fittings directly. So this takes, like, for instance, a 1/4 inch to 5/16, or basically 1/4 inch or 6.5mm to 8mm push in. So what I can do is on this side, just go like that, push it straight on. And yeah, when I put this inside the font, I just have to hook it up to that. So I'm just going to do that right now. This could be a little bit cleaner, to be honest with you. Look, it'll probably work. I think for the video it should be okay. But to be honest with you, if I really wanted to make sure this beer line was good, I'd just probably have a nice clean cut here. I'd probably use either a really sharp Stanley knife, or we've got a pipe cutting tool. It's only about $2 or $3 or something, and that'll ensure you get a nice square sharp edge on there. But anyway, so that just pushes on there like so. And then this goes into the font. And you sort of have to jiggle this around a little bit to get the nuts into place. Then when you see the inside of the font like this, I first just hold it in place while twisting that slimline nut like so. Once I've got a couple threads engaged, I can use this tool here. So yeah, this is the new 7-in-1 tool. We used to have a 5-in-1 tool, but now this one has a couple other slots in here to disconnect duotype fittings as well. So I'm just going to go onto this slimline nut and just twist it like that. Now, when you're fitting the taps, we generally recommend going for a stainless steel tap. We do have some flow control taps as well, but to be honest with you, we've come out with some new flow control disconnects we might show you a little bit later on. And for that reason, I reckon just the standard stainless steel taps are the way to go. So to fit them on, basically just you'll see there's some teeth in the back of the tap here, and they engage with the shank. So once those teeth engage, you won't be able to rotate the tap sideways like this. So yeah, you just put the tap up against the shank, you do this, and you start to feel the teeth engage once you've done this up a few revolutions. And that just goes like so, like that. And then you just repeat the same step with all of these. Once you get the shanks done up enough, you can do them up a little bit more with the 7-in-1 tap spanner, or one of the older 5-in-1 tap spanners. Yeah, just with this little concave piece in here, just this little piece in here, you've got a little loop here, and that just goes into the hole of the collet, and then you just twist that round like that. So it doesn't have to be ridiculously tight, but the other thing is we also have a spring. Now this is an optional extra. Some people like these springs, some people prefer not to use them. There's pros and cons. If you don't use a spring in the tap, it means that when you turn the tap open like this, the tap just stays open. Now that can be handy. Let's say if you're filling up a jug and want your other hand free to do something else. Definitely in a high turnover bar scenario, you'd probably want to have no springs in there. However, some home brewers do like the springs, mainly because if they get drunk and I've got friends serving beer off their kegerator, they can put the spring in there like so, and I'll show you what happens with that in there. You just do that guy up there. Look, I'm just going to do it loosely up for this video. You can see if I pull this tap handle forward and let go, it shuts itself off. So basically that can be a little bit handy. And maybe if you've got a whole room of drunken people serving themselves off a kegerator, there's a much better chance they're going to get the tap turned off and you're not going to have beer all over the floor. Now lastly, with the tap handles, the stock standard ones are these sort of black plastic straight ones like that. We also have another option, which is this sort of ball style black plastic one that looks like this. Or alternatively, we've got quite a nice heavy chrome plated brass one. And look, this is probably the nicest tap handle. It's definitely one that I kind of like. It's nice heavy duty, and it looks really nice and shiny. So that's a really good option as well. There's also other things you can put on there, things like decal holders and so forth. So you can probably see them on the website. But look, most people would just go for one of these. Unless you've got a commercial premises, you might want to go for one of the other fancy decal holders or something, so you know which beer is in which tap. Now the Series 4 Kegerator does include a CO2 cylinder bracket like this. This fits onto these lugs just at the back of the fridge like so. So it just goes on like that. And then it's a great size for the 2.6 kilogram gas cylinder. If you've got the larger 6 kilogram gas cylinder, the big one that's about double the size, you can't really put it in this bracket. Look, I don't think these lugs are going to be strong enough. There's a good chance you might pull them out of the back of the fridge. The other thing is the 6 kilo cylinder would sit sort of round about here and it would look pretty ugly. You know, it would be about the same height as the taps. So the 2.6 is already quite a lot of gas as well. So generally speaking, you know, a 2.6 will be enough to carbonate and dispense about 200 litres of beer. Or if you've got commercial beer which is already carbonated, then you're going to be able to dispense something in the vicinity of around about 400 litres or so, or maybe even 500 litres if you have no wastage. Now all the new Series 4s come with our Mark IV regulator. This is a really awesome regulator which just recently came out. So in 2019, if you're getting one of these Kegerators, that will be already included. You just screw it on like that, so I go finger tight. Then getting the 7-in-1 tool, you'll see this large and sort of reinforced opening. I'll just tighten that up about another half a turn. And that's all you need to do. You don't have to go ridiculously tight on here. If you go too tight, you end up just going to damage the nylon washers in there more frequently. You have to change them. I'm not going to put the knob in the front of the regulator yet, and I'm going to explain that later on. So I'm just going to put this one off to the side. Now on the output of the regulator, your regulators might include one of these barbs, but at the same time, we're starting to sell more and more of these Duo-Tight push-in fittings just because they're such a reliable push-in fitting, and they make the Kegerator setup so easy and so fast. So yeah, the barb's nothing exciting. You just push the hose over it and use a hose clamp. So I'm not going to show you that. There's actually plenty of other videos I've made on how to put on barbs. The Duo-Tight fitting just goes on like this. Now, once again, you do this up finger tight. This particular Duo-Tight fitting has a larger hex here, and that drops down into just a smaller, it's got like a little shoulder on the hex, and that little shoulder on the hex actually matches up with this hex sort of size here, so I can actually do this up a little bit more. Once again, it doesn't have to be ridiculously tight, just another couple half turns like that. To be honest with you, maybe even just like, yeah, just so it's firm like that. I mean, we're going to do a pressure check on that later anyway, so yeah, now with the beer line, I've got a bit of an angle sliced off on this one, so I'm going to use this cutting tool here, and these are really great to get a nice square clean cut on the beer line. Yep, that's a pretty good job, and that just goes in, so just push that in firmly like so. Then what I do is get the gas line. Now this is a fairly long piece of gas line, so almost certainly, because I've got a 3-tap Kegerator here, I'm going to have to split this gas line into 3 different outputs. So I'm not going to put on the T-piece yet, because if I chop this into 3 pieces on the outside of the fridge, I won't be able to fit all 3 pieces into the back of the fridge here. The hole's just not big enough. So what I'm going to do is run the gas line through. I'm going to feed it all through like so. And then I'm going to put on T-pieces on the inside of the fridge. Now we're going to put 3 taps into this Kegerator, so it's going to be pretty full. And the 3 kegs we're going to be using are the Cornelius standard size 19-litre kegs, or 5-gallon kegs essentially. So if I put 3 of those in here, this glass rack here is going to collide with one of the kegs. Now if you've only got 2 kegs in here, it's not a problem. If you've got 3 kegs like I'm doing, you have to remove this bad boy. So you might actually find this a useful glass rack. You might put it up somewhere else in your own home bar. But for now, I'm just going to remove it out of the back of the Kegerator here, like so. All right, so when you've got your gas line inside the fridge like this, you need to sort of envisage how these two T-pieces are going to work. Because this is a triple tap font, we've given you two T-pieces. If you've got a double tap font, you're only going to have one T-piece, and if you've got a single tap font, you're not going to have any T-pieces included in the kit. But anyway, because I need to turn this one gas line into three gas lines, what I want to do is try to envisage how much length I'm going to need. So one handy little tip is you can actually draw marks with the texter. You do also have the fact that our beer line's printed every 50 centimeters. So you'll notice here it says 50 centimeters. So you can actually use the printing to measure out the beer line to some degree. So I know from that, the start of that printing there to here is pretty close to 50 centimeters. You might find it off by a couple centimeters, but it's pretty damn close. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop the beer line back here. That seems sort of about right to me. Then I'm going to put on this first T-piece like so. Then I'm going to get another small piece of beer line like this. Going to put that in here, use it like a little joiner. And then put on the other T-piece. And then what I'm going to do is get this beer line here, and then I'm going to cut this into three fairly even sections. So, I mean, the kegs are all going to be quite close together, so there's no need to have, you know, so much beer line in here. I reckon if I have three pieces which are, you know, about 50 centimeters in length, that should be enough. Okay, so I've got my three pieces of beer line, and I'm left with a little offcut. I might use that a bit later on. And I just push this into the other parts of the T-piece, like so. Now with this particular kegerator, I'm setting it up with ball lock fittings. We've got a couple different types of ball lock fittings. We've got these plastic ones or the stainless steel ones. If you want a really high quality fitting and you don't mind spending a bit more money, I think these stainless steel ones are the way to go. Once again, you can have barb types, but we use like this same FFL fitting, which actually is the same one we put on the regulator, and it's the same one we use in a lot of places actually. So that sort of just pushes onto the beer line like that. And this one's no different if you use the plastic one. It's exactly the same fitting and the same way of joining it on there, just with that same FFL fitting. Now if you're using commercial keg couplers, like you're wanting to do like the 50 litre kegs of VB or Carlton Draft or Tui's or something like that, you're probably going to need the commercial keg couplers, which I'll show in another video altogether, so you can see that in one of the other links that we put on our website. Now on your beer lines, you've actually got a slightly different type of fitting. They look similar actually, and to a lot of newbies they might actually think they're the same, but actually these two fittings, they're not compatible. With the stainless steel ones, you can see there's a little black ring around the base there, meaning this is a liquid fitting, and then the gas ones have a white ring around the base there. And then with the plastic ones, the whole fitting, the main body of the fitting is made of grey plastic. And then with the beer ones, the main body of the fitting's made of black plastic like that. So on the beer lines, I'm going to use these ones here. And these just push on just exactly the same way as the gas fittings pushed on. They just go straight in like that. And away I go. Now, one thing you might find really handy inside the fridge is actually labeling your disconnect. So sometimes if you've got a little sticker or a label or a color code, or even like some of the electrical shrink wrapped, you can color code them if you want. But actually labeling each line, so I might say left, middle, right, for instance, so you know which disconnect is which tap. So that can be a really handy thing for you to do if you can be bothered later on. So that's how to fit up the beer lines. The other thing you'll notice in the back of the fridge here is we've got this air circulation fan. Now we recommend using the air circulation fan all the time because it really improves the efficient running of the fridge. Firstly, as it helps circulate the air, meaning you're going to have much more even temperature. If you don't turn the fan on, you might notice there's a reasonable temperature differential between the back of the fridge, where the chill plate is, and between the front of the door. I mean, any fridge is going to have some degree of temperature differential from the front to the back, but it's definitely significantly exacerbated if you don't turn the fan on. You'll notice that you start to get much colder temperatures at these back rear kegs, and the keg at the front here will be a little bit warmer. So that's the first thing. And that can also affect your carbonation levels, meaning that if you have warm and cold kegs all set at the same gas pressure, they'll end up carbonating at slightly different speeds and levels. With this tube that comes out of the fan here, now the whole idea of this is you can use it to cool your font down. So you'll notice that the font does have some insulation in there, but if you do push this line up the font, a small amount of the font near where the taps are doesn't have any insulation, where the shanks go through the font. So that'll cool down and you'll get beads of sweat forming on your font. If you're really in a hot area of Australia, like you maybe in far north Queensland or something like that, and it's very humid, you might find that the condensation on the font might be excessive, and you might find it's not even worth putting this up the font. At the same time though, you've probably got warmer ambient temperature, so it's kind of nice to be able to chill that beer which is sitting inside the font. So it's really up to you whether you really like that compromise or not. Now with the font fan tube, you probably find the length of this a little bit too long. So you can get a tape measure and measure the height of your font and actually measure how much of this you need. This one here, I've actually got to chop back to down here. The other thing I wanted to show you is when you're pushing this up the font, one problem you can have is if you have this tube which is cut square like that, when you push it up the font, it sometimes can hit the top of the font and actually block the airflow. So one little trick I like to do is actually chop this on a little bit of an angle like that. And it's much less likely to end up cutting the airflow at the top there. So I'm just going to push this right up the font like that. And that'll keep my font nice and cold. Now we've hooked up all our gas lines now and our T-pieces. Now what we've got to do is do a pressure check. It's really important whenever you set up any keg system to do a pressure check and make sure you've got no leaks before leaving your gas bottle on. So this is the Mark IV regulator that comes now with the new kits. If we turn on the gas cylinder here, you'll see this pressure gauge is going to go up because this one is measuring the gas tank pressure. Now, the gas tank pressure doesn't really tell you that much. It's not really a good indication of how much gas you got left because it's going to read about the same pressure all the way until the gas cylinder is just about to run out, and then the gas pressure is going to drop suddenly. The gas pressure inside this gas cylinder is basically more of a measure of almost what temperature the gas cylinder's at. So at hot days, you're going to find the needle goes up, and in cold days, it's going to go down. But please, if you need to measure the amount of gas you got left in the tank, put it on your scales and measure it with your bathroom scales or something like that instead. You'll notice when these gas cylinders, for instance, are full, they're about 10 kilos. And when they're empty, they're about 2.6 kilograms less than that because they're a 2.6 kilogram capacity tank, meaning they hold 2.6 kilograms of gas. The larger gas cylinders, obviously being 6 kilo, they hold 6 kilograms of gas. So you notice the difference in 6 kilograms between full and empty. So that's the way to really work out how much gas you got left. So I'll turn the gas tank on. And you see straight away this needle just jumped up there. Now there's no pressure in the output side because I haven't actually started to wind this in yet. You notice with the knob here that you don't even need to have this in the gauge. If I've got it completely out here, it means I've got no gas flow and there's nothing pushing that diaphragm down, and as a result there's no gas going to the low pressure side of the regulator. So you can see the gauge here is reading the opposite side, this side here, and this is the gas line going into the keg. So this is my keg pressure essentially, and this is my bottle pressure. So I'm going to get this knob, put it into the regulator. You have to twist it quite a few revolutions when you first put it in for the first time. But you'll start to feel a little bit of resistance, and I can just feel that about now. I can just see that, and I just saw the needle move a fraction there, so I'm just going to twist it in a little bit more and just dial the pressure in. Now, if you accidentally go too high with this, and let's say I go, oops, I've gone up to say, 35 PSI, I've gone too far. If I turn the pressure down, you notice the needle's not going down. This is a little bit different to a pneumatics or a compressed air regulator, where a lot of those types of regulators, you'll turn the gas pressure down and you'll go anti-clockwise like this, and the gas will start hissing out and actually releasing gas. Now with CO2 and inert gases like this, it can be a bit dangerous just to vent air into a room, and you could essentially fill an entire room with the gas and suffocate yourself. So you generally don't release gas using the regulator on these types of regulators. So if you want to go down in pressure, you have to turn this knob all the way back out and pull the pressure release valve to release the gas pressure. Go back down to 0 and then start the process again. Now something I should also tell you is when you've got a keg system, often people will use some type of check valve or one-way check valve or non-return valve. And if you're using one of those, obviously if I've got my keg sitting in the fridge and I've accidentally gone too high, the kegs might still be at 40 PSI. And if I use this pressure release valve, it's only going to release the pressure between this gas line and wherever I've got that one-way check valve, because it's stopping the gas going backwards into the out of this pressure release valve. Secondly, I don't really like to recommend using this pressure release valve, so it's always best to release the gas pressure from the keg side, because the other reason is if you happen to have a really, really full keg, so let's say you've got a ball lock keg, for instance, and the gas post is just slightly below the liquid line, what you can do is end up sucking some beer up through your gas line into your regulator. So the other thing is I would probably say avoid using this regulator, this pressure release valve, especially if you're a newbie. Really, it's a safety device, and I would use the pressure release valve on either your actual keg or keg coupler, or somewhere on the keg end there. So that's pretty much it. When you're setting your gas, most people, if you're going to be refrigerating your beer down to maybe 1-2 degrees, for instance, you're probably going to want to use about a pressure of about 10-12 psi to dispense with. As your dispense temperature gets lower, your dispense pressures also can get lower as well, but you have to refer to a carbonation chart for that, and we've got that in the instruction manual, so it's worth having a look at that before you finish all that. Now, one of the last steps setting up the kegerator is making sure our beer line's the right length to get the right flow speed out of the tap. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of trying to use gas pressure on the regulator to go up and down to adjust the flow speed out of the tap, but of course, the pressure on the regulator, it has to be set at a very specific pressure based on the temperature of the kegs and the carbonation level of the beer. If you use too much pressure at the regulator, you're going to overcarbonate your beer, and if it's too low, then you're going to undercarbonate the beer and it's going to start going flat over time. So as a result, one of the only ways we can adjust the flow rate at the tap end is to actually change the beer line length. So we'd start with a long line like this. Now, if you want to be a bit approximate, you're probably just going to end up with around about 1.5 meters if you're using the 4mm internal diameter. However, you can get a bit more precise with this and use a stopwatch and measuring jug. And if you want to do that, you basically want to measure out approximately 300 mils per 10 seconds. So literally what you can do is start with a keg of water, hook your beer line up onto the keg like so, and then open the tap up and measure 10 seconds with a stopwatch, see how much water comes out into a measuring jug. If it's about 300 mils per 10 seconds, that's great. If not, what you'll do is take this off, disconnect the beer line, shorten it by say 10-15 centimeters, then repeat the process. Obviously, the shorter your beer line gets, the faster your pour's going to get. So start with a long beer line, shorten it down. That's going to be a lot easier than adding more beer line on. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for that, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Look, if you want to hear about any of the other cool stuff we're working on, definitely sign up to our Facebook page or subscribe to our YouTube channel just down in the bottom right-hand corner there. All right, if you've got any other questions, flick us an email or give us a phone call. See ya.